Now I want to welcome in Bill Raftery to the 24 Sports Series Social Distance. Raf, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We're a long way from one another, so I think we're pretty safe.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you joining me. How are you holding up through the
Great.
quarantine?
Well, I'm very busy. I can't. Tough to fit you even into my busy schedule. There's not much going on really. We're lucky down here in Jupiter. We've been able to play golf, which has been enjoyable, and we've got a couple of the kids, a couple of grandchildren. So it's been entertaining to say the least. But the tragedy you hear and the things that people are going through, and the frontline people in particular, how magnificently they've reacted. It gives you a whole new feeling. Not one you want to put your arms around, but it just makes you feel very good about humanity.
For sure. What does Bill Raftery do in a time like this? Does he watch Netflix? Does he read books? Does he pour a beverage?
I try and read for at least an hour a day, which is more than I did when I was in college, I assure you. But, how the heck we pass time? Well, work out, walk, the golf, being entertained by the grandchildren. Nothing specific. Just a little TV here and there, but I'm not much into I end up falling asleep late at night for a lot of reasons. So I don't get heavy into the Netflix.
Yeah.
I'm still on the first year of Homeland.
Okay.
So, that goes way back. But I don't know, just being entertained by who's here at the house. And,
Yeah.
as I said, with the golf, we had a lot of things we could do outside the house when necessary.
What's the book of choice right now?
Believe it or not, old Tom Morris and young Tom Morris. My daughter got it from me. The original winners of the Open, as we know it.
Yeah.
Not the U.S. Open, but the Open. But that's the one we're doing. Some political books, just anything to amuse. And once in a while, I get an athletic book or a story that somebody wants me to take a read of and see what I think of it. A friend of mine did a book on Red Holzman, which probably you and myself are the only ones listening would know who he is with the age difference, but stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
I'm amenable to reading anything. I actually finished an Al McGuire book a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
I felt I'd done a bunch of them, and a lot of them are the same stories that we all told one another after games and in places that serve lemonade.
Right.
But stuff like that. I'm pretty open, but I'm not much on fiction, though.
Gotcha. Well, obviously, we didn't get to have an NCAA tournament this year. You've been doing the title game, the Final Four, for quite some time. What'd you miss most about not having an NCAA tournament?
There were so many storylines this year. Close to home, since I coached at Seton Hall, that comes out a little bit. And that, they had some people that could do some damage. Could they win it all? Because that's another. A lot of people were picking Kansas, obviously. But the Dayton story, the San Diego State story, Virginia on a roll late in the year. Could this have been Gonzaga's year? I mean, there's so many stories that have abounded. The Big Ten having so many quality teams, beating one another up all year long. Could somebody, jump out of that particular conference? But there was so many interesting little happenings that could have taken place in the first week that would have shocked people. And the sadness in it, as sad as it is for us, which is a selfish way of looking at it, some of these kids would never get a chance to play in it again.
Right.
And then there's those couple of kids who, they might have really marketed themselves. DiVincenzo comes to mind a few years ago at Villanova, where they weren't thinking NBA for him, and he had a great tournament. But all sports in the spring, getting basically shut out is such a sad undertaking for a kid who's in college, because you can't regain it, basically.
For sure. What do you think happens if there's no fall sports? How much impact will that have on the game?
I'll be curious to see what happens with football. Basketball, other than some major arenas, most of their money is TV money.
Right.
Now I know, President Emmer came out and said, if there aren't any students, there won't be any sports. That'll be something, obviously, that'll dictate what happens. But, football, so much of the money is attendance that I just don't know. And then the structure of the athletic department and other departments is predicated on that income. So, it's, the health issue is obviously, magnified as it should be. But in terms of the ramifications on college athletics is going to be extraordinary. And also on colleges. I think there's going to be a lot of schools that basically don't have the development or foundation to fall back on. I don't know what's going to happen to some of those. And then how about the family that with this financial struggle, they say to their son or daughter, maybe we 1 year off till I get my legs a little bit here and can afford it. So I just, it's something that none of us have witnessed or experienced. And the dilemma, the magnitude and the impact of it is just absolutely extraordinary and devastating.
Yeah, it's been awful. I want to switch gears a little, and I know you stay up to date on everything. And one of the, I don't know if you call it a trend yet, but one of the things that's been a storyline this offseason is the NBA G League recruiting high school players to kind of their new professional path. I'm curious your take on that and what you know about it, and if you are for kids having other opportunities outside of college like this.
This is the most serious I've been in years here. Now you got me talking real heavy. My reaction is there's a couple of ways I'm going to go on it. One, the impact on a generation of kids who aren't good enough and decide at a young age that they're going to try, they can at least make some money in the G League and stop studying come 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, where the people around them suggested, and they believe it. The harm is going to be incredible. It does give kids an opportunity who are not interested in academics, which we both know happens in a lot of instances, and I understand that. I don't think college basketball will ever be harmed to the extent that some people do, because there's more to it. It's still the shirt, it's still the followers. They may not be the NBA first round or early entry kids, but people still will watch and enjoy. And the venues we all go to, there's a lot of teams whose kids aren't going to play in the NBA, and those kids hoot and holler and believe in them and follow them. So it's going to help some kids, but I think the eventual harm is going to be devastating in the sense of a kid not being able to even have a chance at college, a chance at the NBA, and now he's lost and he's 23 or 4. That's the area of concern, and I think some studies should be done on it. Just to expose the possibility to a young guy.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe this is a little off topic, but one thing that I've been paying close attention to is just the uncertainty, especially with this year's NBA draft. And there's a lot of guys that have put their name in that are maybe on the border and not necessarily guaranteed second round picks, but seem to be kind of flirting with it. It seems like, Raf, that if there's any year where uncertainty could impact kids' decisions, I mean, I feel like this is the year. You should make the safe pick and return to school, right?
Well, the young kids better than I do. The high school kids, and you talk to their people, whether it's the AAU coach, in some cases not enough for me, high school coach, but the groupies, and sometimes they're unrealistic, as you well know.
Yeah.
But I just feel for the truth. There's like nothing better than the truth, and some of these kids don't want to hear it. And when I see some of these kids and they're going to opt out for the draft, and I'm saying to myself, I'm an outsider. I've watched you. And I just hope you listen to the right people, and withdraw as quickly as possible and get back and get a degree. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll really learn how to play or step it up a level, get quicker. respond better in situations. But I just don't know who they listen to be. And the NBA is great. I mean, they tell them right away, but it doesn't matter sometimes because of other influences. You know, Harry did it. You were better than him. Remember the points you scored against him in Vegas? And blah, 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 blah. That's irrelevant. But the realistic approach is one that's not taken off. And a lot of kids are broken because of it.
No, you're right. And speaking of the NBA, I think the biggest thing that everybody in quarantine has been paying attention to outside of that is The Last Dance and the documentary about Michael Jordan. Have you been watching it?
I have. I missed the last couple. This is water, by the way. I know you're going to accuse me of having something else. But once in a while it interferes into our cocktail time, so I have to look at it later. But yeah, you see, I've known Michael. I'm not an intimate or anything, but we used to go down to Pinehurst with all the Carolina guys. When I say Carolina guys, Dean, God bless him, and Roy, and Doug Moe, and George Carl, Larry Brown, and Michael would come, obviously, and then they would invite people. And there was a broad spectrum of people that, basketball people that they were comfortable with. And so I got to know Michael and in a different way. And the story I can relate, and it comes out a little bit, is competitiveness in all of this series. The Nets were playing. I used to do the Nets for about 23 years.
Right.
And I and Eagle and I are doing a game where Kerry Kittles goes off. And he's got Jason Kidd, who's like one of the great setup guys of all time.
Right.
And whatever he had, it was in the mid-20s at the half. And they were up by 22, 24, whatever, the Nets. Third quarter starts. Michael comes out, and he guards Kerry Kittles. So you know he said to Phil, let's get this over with. I'm taking him. So regardless of what the glove says, in comes Michael. Curry gets 0 points, and flip the score, game's over. Bulls are ahead by 15, 18, doesn't matter. Michael runs by Bird and I, and he puts his fingers up like this, and he looks at me like, that's what Curry got, 0 in the third quarter, which tells you that side of him. And he was driven. I mean, just amazing desire, competitiveness. You were expected to make that shot if you were Hodges or Paxson or Kerr or whoever that off guard was. He was demanding, no question about it. But it worked. A lot of guys got rings, a lot of guys chirping, a lot of guys made a lot of money.
Yeah, it's been cool to see that competitiveness on display and really him like reflecting back about it. Like in the episode recently, he said winning has a price and leadership has a price, and basically just talked about pulling guys along with him. It's been cool to kind of see him reflect on that time in that way.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting? A lot of guys, particularly NBA guys, and I can remember back with the Knicks when they were, geez, so long ago, right? With Holzman and that crowd when they won, 2 out of 3 NBA championships, and Red in a timeout would ask them what they thought we should run. What do you think? Mm-hmm. And I think the better teams, particularly in the NBA and in college, the coach listens to somebody who's in the fray, has a feel for it. And you could see in some of the timeouts when they'd sneak a camera in and he would make suggestions about how to handle a ball screen or who was coming off and what he wanted. That's what you look for. But there's a price to be paid if you don't follow. Now, the other story, if you don't follow through on what you're supposed to do, or your job is to do this and you don't do it. But I was told, and again, Mike will be the only one to share this, but the NBA, as you know, when they do practice, a lot of it is rehearsal and scouting and situations. And then they might go, okay, let's go 15 minutes hard. And it's less than an hour and a half. And I'm told that they would divide the Bulls up in terms of talent. So Scotty would be on one side, Mike on the other, and so on and so forth. And if you were on Michael's team and messed up, he would say to Phil, get Evan out of here and put somebody else in, because he wasn't helping us win this 15, 20-minute little scrimmage. So, Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is a price to be paid for winning. Some leaders are softer, I would think. Timmy Duncan, but he was a different guy. He was, center or power forward. But Michael was unique, and it showed in the results, obviously.
Well, what's been your favorite part of this documentary?
Just memories for me. In the early days, CBS had the NBA in
Right.
the late 80s. So we were doing those games and being part of the Nets and watching them. They zipped them 3-0 in the playoffs. But just some memories more than anything of seeing games. The Pistons, for example, I spent 2 weeks in Detroit during one of those series, not against him, but with the Bucks, and just seeing Chuck and the Bad Boys, the style of play. I mean, just crazy things that maybe the average person wouldn't even look at.
Yeah.
They're more interested in the bells and whistles of Michael. But I'm getting a kick about the whole growth of the NBA and, where it is now and the rules being so much different.
Right. Who would you pick to be the next guy to be the centerpiece of a documentary like this? Anybody that you'd love to see one on?
Wow. Who would I? Interesting. I think a Magic Bird combo would be pretty good.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That's sort of my era. I would like a Wes Elgin, and a Frazier Reed.
Starting to show your age, Raf.
Which one?
Said you're starting to show your age.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's when I started. So you sort of reminisce back to those days. But there's so many good players and the prominence that Michael had. I don't know if anybody will ever attain it again. How many more sneakers can you sell? Or
right.
It's just his outside marketing that made him bigger than life. Must Be the Shoes was one of the original ones, and so. But ESPN does a great job with those. I mean, they're magnificent. And I think Michael Thompson's brother is one of the producers too, if I'm not mistaken. So he certainly knows the game as well.
Yeah.
Do
you have a opinion on the Michael Jordan LeBron debate, or do you just enjoy them both?
Well, they used to ask me who I thought was the best. I used to say Oscar, because that was like I was getting out of school and we used to go to the Garden and watch him. They were almost in there once a week because they had double headers in the Garden, and there were only 8 teams in the league. So you got to see this magnificent basketball player. I think it's eras. They both can play any position they want. Although I would say LeBron could probably play center and power forward. Michael be the other 3 positions. But no, it's just I've never seen a guy that size do what LeBron does. That's what amazes me the most. I think Michael learned to share it more because of buying into the triangle of Tex Winter. And I think Phil did a great job selling him on making other guys better. And I do remember one series LeBron passed up a jump shot and passed it to one of the Cavaliers and he missed. And they were all over him. And it was the right play. So it's one of those guys can't win after a while. But Michael became I think a champion because he realized that other guys could do some things. And, we need everybody here. We need a team to win this.
Right. You mentioned all these memories, and you've obviously had a number of those over your esteemed broadcasting career. In your eyes, what's kind of been one of your favorite calls or most memorable moments of games you've been at?
I think the 6 overtime Syracuse game, if you ask Jay Billis or Sean McDonough and myself, that was something special. It was like a beautiful boat ride. These kids played their backsides off. The other, it's funny. The other one, Vern and I did George Mason meeting Connecticut, which is lost. And I think they were the first team where you went, oh, they're in the Final Four. Jimmy Larinaga was the coach. Then we got Wichita State, and we got a couple of Butlers. And that sort of changed a lot of stuff, too, that game where guys were starting in October, no matter what conference they were in, saying, hey, if we work hard, we got a lot of seniors now, we got a chance.
Right.
That game sort of resonates as well.
You're obviously known for some of your catchphrases, whether it be onions or with a kiss. What are the originations of those? Did those just kind of happen in the moment, or are those things that you thought of before? Did you ever say them when you were in, coaching? Where did they kind of come from?
Not being very smart, I guess, or having an empty barrel. I think it's a reaction to a situation. I mean, I never thought, like I wrote stuff down. For example, onions, Iron Eagle claims we were doing the games together, and I always thought it was Miami. Kevin Edwards, Nets are playing Orlando. Kevin Edwards, the Nets, if they had 15, 16 wins for the year, it was like a great year. They were really struggling. And Kevin makes a three in the corner to beat Orlando, and I said onions. I never said it before, I don't like raw onions. I like sauteed onions. It was just crazy. So that just popped out. So, just a way of saying something that comes into your mind. I always say it's family, people you pal around with, how late you go to bed or early you go to bed, or what joint you hang out in, or the characters you're with that influence you. And I think some of those do. And maybe not the words themselves, but being expedient, being succinct. And a lot of it is to get the heck out of the way of the play-by-play guy's way. Nothing, no intellectual input whatsoever, just a spontaneous reaction.
You show so much emotion when you're announcing games. Have you thought about the potential of announcing a game with no fans in the stands and how that may impact those big moments like that?
It's some of the first round NCAA games, as you know, it might be pretty empty. Occasionally you'll have the 11 o'clock game in the morning, and it's maybe somebody that people aren't interested in that town. But, the game is the game, and it's supposed to lift us. So I hope that is the case if in fact we do. I don't think it'll impact the play whatsoever. It might impact the theatrics. When a kid makes a goal and his reaction and a lot of the ribbing, the wolfing, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But, I hope the game carries you. And don't forget, there's a lot more people watching at home that are in that arena too. But in terms of lifting the players, I think they're going to have to really work hard at generating not false enthusiasm, but hey, and again, these kids, you've been to a million practices like I have. These kids work hard.
Right.
All the programs, these guys are. So when that game starts, it's almost like if they carry what they do in practice over, I think the play will be that level. But I think just that the ambiance, or maybe the viewer, I'm sure will be piping in sound and stuff like that to make it a little more enjoyable and probably a lot more theatrical.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Raf, I appreciate you taking the time out and doing this, man. Thank you. You're awesome for it. And I hope you stay safe in Florida.
You too. Always a pleasure, pal. Good luck with everything. Look forward to seeing you.